Today we're going to be building an armature. Now an armature is kind of like the skeleton of a project. It's the inside structure that we build around. So for a papier-mâché sculpture, our armature is going to be made up of crumpled up newspaper, tape, and sometimes wire. So I have a sketch here of the creature I'm going to be building. And what I'm going to do first is start to build each of its body parts individually and then put them all together. So I'm going to be starting with the body. Now it's going to be kind of long and twisted. So I'm going to crumple up the newspaper tightly and add more as I need it. Sometimes it's a good idea to have a partner when you're doing this so that one person can hold the newspaper and another person can tape. But what I'm going to do since I'm by myself is just grab some pieces of tape and put it on the side of the table so that I have them ready. Now when I'm ready to tape, it's a good idea to make sure that my newspaper is relatively smooth so that my tape can actually do something. It needs to have a job, so I'm not just putting tape on for no reason. It's actually keeping things in place where I need it. So if you find yourself using a lot of tape and not really getting anywhere with it, you might want to reconsider how you're making your object. So I'm starting with kind of a bean shape, and I'm going to add on to this because I think my body needs to be bigger. So you can usually get some more body with your armature by crumpling up your paper first and then add. So I crumple it and then open it, and that makes it kind of sit up a little bit more. I'm really working on trying to get the curve of my creature. I want him kind of twisting as he goes. So I'm shaping the body into the curve I want as I go along. And as we're going, it's important to note that the tighter your armature is, so the more tightly crumpled your newspaper is, and how well taped it is going to really make a difference once you start papier-mâché. So you want to make sure that you're getting the job done as you go along. So I'm starting to finally see the curvature that I'm looking for. It's kind of an S shape. Now I just need to make sure my shape is correct. So I'm just going to be slowly adding tape as I go along to smooth out my shape. And remember, this is just the torso, so I will be adding on legs, arms, head, tail, all of that as we go along. Some helpful hints when you're making an armature, especially if you're looking at an animal or a person. It's a really good idea to kind of look at the animal and even see maybe the internal musculature, the skeletal systems. You actually understand how things are put together. You can see the way the muscles move or the way the bones fit together to create a certain shape. And that's really going to help you create something that's more lifelike and actually looks like an animal. All right, so I have the body of my creature ready to go, and now I'm going to start building the limbs, the head, and the tail. So it's very important that you have the body done first, that way you can use it for scale. So make sure you don't make gigantic legs or too tiny of legs and then it doesn't support itself. So basically the legs that I'm making, when I start with them, they end up kind of looking like a chicken leg or like a turkey leg. So it's big on the thigh area and then gets smaller as it comes down. And once I get to the foot area, then I'm going to be using some wire to help make a sturdy claw. But I think I'm going to start with the head first. So my head is kind of like a rounded triangle shape. So when I crumple the paper, I'm going to try and make it smaller towards the top and then larger at the bottom. And I like to wrap the paper over and around things to make it smoother. That makes it a lot easier to papier-mâché towards the end. And before I start taping, I want to check to see that it's a good size, that it fits the area that I'm adding on to. And I like to take the extra paper and kind of wrap it around the body area. If I have extra paper, it makes it easier to attach. But first I want to make sure that everything is really tightly packed so that it stays together well and forms a very sturdy base. So I've got kind of the basic bird head, and I'm going to wrap it around the body. Now, attaching appendages to the body takes a little bit of practice to get it to stay on in a good way, and definitely having that extra paper to wrap around the other pieces definitely helps, rather than just having a line all the way around that you need to wrap. This gives it a little extra stability, kind of like tucking your shirt in. It keeps it in place. So again, you don't want to be wasting tape when you're doing this. You want to be making sure that every piece of tape you put down is doing something. So make sure you've attached it really well and that it's staying where you want it. So maybe move at angles. So here I added two kind of like a harness almost, keeping it in place. And now I have the top with this flap here, so I'm just going to tape that down really tightly, and that should keep everything in place. Now I'm going to start on the legs. So it's important that you make both of your legs at the same time before attaching them. That way you know that they're the same size. It's always a bummer when you make one and it looks really great and you attach it, and you make another one, it looks great and you attach it and you realize they're completely different sizes, so then your creature doesn't stand up anymore. So make both limbs first before you add them on. So remember, I was saying we want to make it look like a chicken leg. So big on the top and then smaller as it goes there. So again, I'm wrapping the newspaper around, kind of creating an indent in here so that it's going to attach nicely as I put it on. And so I'm checking the sizes to make sure that it's a decent size as I go on. And from there, I'm going to tape it to keep it in place. And the rest of the leg is kind of made by crumpling and twisting the newspaper. So if you make the newspaper tight enough, you won't even need to use any wire for stability because your newspaper will kind of be strong enough to support things. So I'm constantly checking my objects to make sure that it's a good size. So I'm going to make another one of these right away before I finish the leg. That way I know it's the same size. So remember, to make these nice and sturdy, you want to be crumpling and twisting kind of at the same time, so making layers of crumples and twists. You can also use wire, but you want to make sure that your newspaper is sturdy enough that it could hold it anyway without the wire. Other people like to use cardboard or other sorts of found objects to put inside of their armature, and that's just fine if you can think of something good to work with it. So as I'm twisting, I'm also going to kind of going back and wrapping the newspaper around the same areas. I'm going to tape it down first so that I know it's going to stay in place since I'm adding paper on. I'm still making sure the bend is in the right place. And it's okay if they're slightly different because we all know that our appendages move at different angles as we're walking or leaping. We just want to make sure they're the same size. So now I've reached the foot area, and I'm going to make kind of the main body of the foot first, and then I will add the toes on with wire. So I'm kind of placing my leg how I think it's going to be. I'm attaching it onto the armature so that I can kind of see how it's going to be sitting. So this is roughly the placement of where I want the legs to be. So now I just need to tape them on. So we'll do one at a time. Now taping on the appendages is usually one of the most difficult parts to get to stay. So we need to make sure we do a good job of it. So usually I tape it down in a few places, and then I go over that tape again to make sure that it's sturdy. Because sometimes this tape doesn't like to stick to the newspaper. I've checked again with the back leg to make sure it's in the right place before I tape it down, so it's doing what I want it to. And then I'm going to tape it down in a few places and make sure I tape both legs on completely. There, now I'm starting to see the leg coming out a little bit more as I've added that on. So since my creature is going to be coming off of a wall and not necessarily sitting on the table, the way it's going to balance really relies on how I hang it. Whereas if you're making something that's standing, you want to make sure that its legs support the weight of the creature. So you want to make sure they're even, and you want to make sure they're attached well enough that it's going to stand up on its own. Now I will say creating something with 2 legs is a lot more difficult to balance than something with 3 legs or 4 legs. So if you choose 2 legs, you might want to have a tail coming out the back to help balance it like a tripod so that it stands up. Otherwise, 4 legs, definitely a lot more stable. So now I'm going to be making the front legs. I'll worry about the wings, the ears, and the toes a little bit later. So its front legs are reaching like it's leaping outwards. They're going to be a little bit slimmer than the back legs. So I'm tightly wrapping the front arms because I want them to be very strong. So it's twisted, it's wrapped around, and it's taped tightly, and that's going to keep it very sturdy when we're working with it. The key thing is to make sure that it kind of stays as the same thickness throughout. We don't want big lumps and bumps. And then I need to add on kind of a larger paw, like it's reaching out. So just like I did with the head, I'm going to be wrapping that extra paper around what I have here, and that's going to make it a little bit stronger. So now I've got kind of a paw shape. It's going to be reaching out as it's leaping. So again, just like with the back legs, we need to make both arms first to make sure they're the same size. It's usually helpful to remember how much newspaper you used when you made it. And my other arm is kind of bent forward just a little bit more than the other one. I'm going to leave just a little bit of thickness up at the top for the shoulder area. And the rest is going to be twisted down. So as I'm twisting, I'm just going to slowly add tape to keep it in place. Just wrapping around the areas. All right, now we have the basic figure. I will show you anything else that requires wire or other materials in the next demonstration.